things my wife says about me all the time is that I never do anything half-hearted. It goes against my DNA, it seems. If you're a high achiever, you probably know exactly what I mean and have someone in your life that says some version of this to you. That you're a perfectionist, that you can't just let it go, that you can't say no to a cool work opportunity. Phrases like, it's not enough and I'm not done yet, swim around your brain constantly. And you're always wondering. Wondering is your default mode. What can I do next? Or rather, what more can I do next? This state of being can push us to do great things for sure. There are benefits, but it can also get us in hot water. I'm Dr. Shemmassian, admissions expert at Shemmassian Academic Consulting. In this video, I want to talk a bit about the problem with being an overachiever, something we're all increasingly pressured to be. There's a common idiom, how much is too much of a good thing? How much perfection is too much perfection, in other words? Because there is such a thing. Whether we're applying to college, grad school, or medical school, admissions processes can be grueling, demanding, almost full-time jobs. Not to mention the work we put in before we even start our applications. How can the pressure to succeed, the pressure to set yourself up to begin, often push you towards a perfectionism that actually gets in your way in the long run, leading to burnout that can stall your progress and have multiple damaging effects? And where does this pressure come from anyway? Parents? Teachers? Friends? Ourselves? I work with students on a daily basis who talk about their overachieving not as something they're proud of, but as this massive burden, like they're dragging an 18-wheeler behind them, and for good reason. They're just getting tired. I had a student who re-uploaded his art history final 11 times before the midnight deadline, not because he procrastinated, but because he couldn't stop trying to make it better. I had another student who started her own online cooking blog, distributing it to over 1,000 monthly readers, and when I asked her, oh, what's your favorite dish to prepare? Her response was that she didn't really like cooking anymore, that she just wanted to have a creative project to list on her resume. We laughed about it because I understood. I too have felt the pressure to keep doing. The problem is it never really feels like enough, and the joy is always fleeting, isn't it? Weeks, months, even years of work are spent looking for that single moment of payoff that maybe lasts for a day or a week until the next thing to worry about comes along. Maybe it's because I'm an overachiever myself, but I want you to know, I get that we can convince ourselves the payoff is worth going overboard now and then. I'll tell you what I tell my students over and over. There is a way to find balance. You don't have to sacrifice yourself in order to be great. Before we jump in, make sure to hit the like button so our videos can reach more people and start more conversations. First, it's helpful to consider the difference between high achieving and overachieving. Both of these can lead to burnout, and we'll talk about this in a minute. But constantly pressuring yourself to overachieve can stretch you too thin and quickly exhaust you. Both high achieving and overachieving can have you pushing to go above and beyond, to constantly perform above average, taking on more AP classes, more exclusive internships, more extracurriculars, more publication credits. Overachieving, however, can take over when the benchmark we set for ourselves is increasingly unrealistic. If you find yourself taking on projects or positions based strictly on outcome, solely to pad your resume and make you look like a better applicant, you're asking too much of yourself and you're going to burn out and lose any sense of pleasure in your educational path. And isn't this why you're hoping to continue your education in the first place? When you're a high achiever, you'll still seek out elite opportunities, but you'll remember that process is a part of your narrative as well, not just the end goal. Both perspectives can lead you to take on too much work, leaving you stressed and exhausted. But at the end of the day, overachieving can be especially detrimental and feeding into a destructive cycle of excessive self-criticism and the inability to focus on present-time joys in service of planning solely for a distant point in the future. It can also begin to dilute meaning for you, and meaning-making moments are moments you want to store up and save. Not only because that's life, but yes, because these are the things that will be worth talking about in applications. When you search out every good-looking opportunity, when you need to perfect everything, there's little room to measure where you grew, where you evolved, where your own long-term goals and priorities began to take shape. One student I supported insisted on writing one of her admissions essays about an encounter she had with an English professor her freshman year of college. She was alarmed when she got a B- on her first paper. She'd never gotten anything lower than an A- in her AP English classes in high school. When she approached her professor in a panic, he calmly explained that anything in the A range is above average, a B+ is a little bit above average, and anything from a B to a C+ means average work. And every now and then, it's absolutely fine to be in that same range with everybody else. Regardless of what kind of grading scale this professor was using, the interaction stuck with the student because it went against the grain of everything she'd been taught previously. That essentially she had to hit home runs every time she stepped up to the plate. But this simply isn't true. It's an impossible standard to hold yourself to, and again, it's a mentality that has us focusing strictly on the end results, not on who and how we are along the way. In the long run, this is a disservice when you sit down to think about crafting the narrative of who you are and how you've learned, grown, changed, faced obstacles, gotten it wrong in a way that was productive enough to teach you something. Of course, it's easy to tell yourself, forget it. I'll hold myself to these high standards for a few years, and then once I get into the program of my choice, I'll relax. However, before you get there, your pressure to be perfect can lead to burnout. If you've seen the movie The Lion King, you might remember Simba, the future king, and his friend Nala walking through a gray, rocky wasteland where they weren't supposed to be. Think of this as a kind of visual representation of burnout. Essentially, it's not the Disney movie Still You Want to Live In. When we're burned out, we're constantly struggling through that internal wasteland, feeling exhausted, pessimistic, and unmotivated to a degree that can take over in both our school lives and our day-to-day work. And it's not something we can just bulldoze through or ignore. It can also lead to anxiety, depression, or high stress levels. And logistically speaking, it can have a negative effect on our academic work, the very opposite of what we were trying to accomplish when we undertook the workloads that led to the burnout in the first place. Maybe you think you're made of steel and are completely immune to the negative effects of this kind of tunnel vision overachieving. Your train will never derail. You'll never get cornered in the elephant graveyard. And who knows? Maybe you're even toying with the possibility that the fallout is worth it. But think about some of the warning signs. Are you increasingly exhausted, super stressed out, losing any sense of motivation, struggling to maintain a sense of control or balance between academic demands and relaxation time? Are you struggling to concentrate or effectively complete your work? Are you depressed, easily irritated or frustrated, experiencing headaches, trouble sleeping, stomach aches, sore muscles? All these can be warning signs that you're pushing too hard. And eventually your pursuit of perfection can manifest the biggest obstacle to it. Engines overheat. Roller coasters can, terrifyingly, sometimes stall at the top of the hill. I remember when I was younger seeing a runaway truck ram for the first time. They can look pretty terrifying. A steep gravel hill running up the side of a mountain or a winding highway meant to be a kind of salvation for semis experiencing brake failure. To me, it didn't look like salvation. It was just terrifying. I imagine what it would be like to be going so fast you lose control and have to surge up that massive hill to stop yourself. Of course, now it feels like something of a metaphor for that momentum we pick up when we're taking on too much. Eventually, we need an exit ramp. And when our effort to be perfect burns our brakes, sending us off the road, once we do bring ourselves to a stop, we have a tendency to slam into neutral, unable to move forward no matter how hard we push. Any work we get done is a shadow of the quality it used to be when we were operating at our best, and more likely than not, we have trouble getting any work done at all. You want to plan out your academic path so that you're not running the risk of drifting into this danger zone. If not for the sake of your own self-care, for the sake of how much it can undo any progress we've made when it comes to our academics. Of course, sometimes we're overachievers by nature. It's hard to battle our own nature. One alternative, however, is to find a way to establish boundaries, to channel our energy productively. The chase for greater achievement is never going to end, so we need to work to put an end to it ourselves. Think about it this way. Instead of becoming a chronic joiner, become a specialist in what matters to you. Instead of belittling just hobbies, think of how you can independently create new opportunities and extracurriculars for yourself based on what interests you. Instead of taking all advanced level work, take advanced coursework in areas you're most passionate about, taking the time to cultivate mentorships with professors and teachers in these areas, and close working relationships with teachers in other areas. Instead of focusing solely on end goals, take on work you want to be a part of along the way. Don't compare, distinguish. It's important to take some self-inventory when it comes to identifying what passions or interests you want to cultivate. Use those interests as your foundation. I can think of so many times when I pursued an opportunity or workload based on trying to be perfect for those around me. I won't lie to you and say this led to total failure, but it did make it so that I didn't enjoy certain successes nearly as much as I could have. If you're basing your pursuits on what you're interested in, carefully calibrating this against what you can manage, not only will this grow the image of who you are on paper, it will also help stave off burnout because you will be inherently more invested in the process. You're not taking on extra projects just for the results. You're taking them on because you're more invested in them at the outset. So even when work becomes demanding, it will feel less grueling. The payoff will be more than just the product. And when it comes to comparison, don't do it. Avoid it at all costs. It's so easy to fall into this trap. And societally, a culture of standardized test scores and class ranks encourage us to compare and contrast ourselves with others. But when we give into comparison, this is what can pressure us to go full speed ahead and take on responsibilities we can't bear. Remember that runaway truck? Don't be the runaway truck. You don't want to be doing the same things as everyone, hitting the same marks. Falling into a cycle of comparison can cultivate homogeneity in addition to misery. One of the tricky things about perfectionism is that it can often be an iteration of fear. The fear of failure, the fear of loss, the fear of missing out. But perfection is also very often calibrated based on values that have nothing to do with us. They're externally dictated. Therefore, it can push us further away from getting to know who we are and what we need. Interestingly, the word perfection comes from Middle English and Old French meaning completeness or to complete. So think of it this way. Isn't this the antithesis of what we're trying to say in our applications? That we are finished? That we've completed what we need? Instead, we want to offer insight into where we want to continue and keep going. Perfection staves off the idea of continued growth. And that's one of the key reasons it's so important to leave this pursuit behind. And if all of that still leaves you leaning toward perfectionism and overachieving, think of it this way. If you're perfect, you'll have nothing to talk about when an admissions counselor makes you super uncomfortable by asking you what your weaknesses are or a time when you failed. We can talk you through those scenarios too with the linked videos in the description. Don't worry, those questions make me feel kind of panicky too. If you found this video valuable, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. And if you really want to overachieve, in the comment section, tell me why you're driven to overachieve. I'll read every comment and respond to most. Until next time, take care of yourself.